Hello there and welcome once again to the pre-auction videos, this time for the auction of Thursday the 28th of November here at our glorious premises on 69 Southampton Row. It's a cold, blistering winter's eve, but hopefully a few gems to warm the cockles, and by now also the print catalogues will be with you. This is obviously the third and final room auction of the year, and it's been a very fine year. Obviously, we started off with the Indian Mutiny Victoria Cross. We had the superb Army Gold Cross group in the summer. And then now we're finishing off with another very fine offering, I hope you'll all agree. It's been a busy year for all of us here, lots of travels. John's been whizzing all over the country. Robert and I have been all over the world, and hopefully we'll collect the SPINK Air Miles trophy. And a few wares from our travels. I'm going to start with lot 263, and we're always banging on about once in a lifetime, true rarities, and we are very lucky, obviously, to handle Victoria Crosses and Peninsula Gold Crosses with relative reoccurrence over the years. But this, I think, is a once in a generational opportunity. And that, obviously, you will see in front of me, glittering in gold, is this absolutely stunning late 18th century KG Greater George badge. This badge was actually bestowed upon Adolphus, the first Duke of Cambridge, who, besides having the KG to his name, he had three further Gs, the GCB, the GCMG, and the GCH, because he ended up as Elector of Hanover. Adolphus was born in February 1774, the 10th child and the 7th son of King George III. And at the tender age of 12, he, along with three of his elder brothers, was elected a Knight of the Order of the Garter, obviously the senior British order, and one of which there is so few examples of insignia available on the market. We do obviously see the KG breast stars. They do turn up from time and again. But lesser Georges, those are huge rarities. The last example was, of course, the Beaufort Lesser George, sold here at SPINK in November 2005. And before that, the last example I can find of a greater being sold, again, is here at SPINK, when the orders of the Dukes of Kent, the Lesser and the Greater George examples were sold in July 1995. And actually, just by magic, I'm able to produce that catalogue when back in the summer of '95 we featured this the stunning Kent Greater, which was of course diamond set and a real showstopper on the front cover. And this time we've got another Greater George to put on our front cover. So it is a real pleasure to have this consigned to auction. And again, just with the magic of auction provenances, we have to go back to the summer of 1971 when this piece was sold as the property of a lady. It actually made international news, and actually was on the front cover of several newspapers. I can flick through, and actually the next lot was an important Peninsula Gold Cross group. But it's no surprise that the Cambridge Greater actually trumped that and made a far greater price than that Peninsula Gold Cross group, which I'm sure Robert is very jealous of. So this obviously is a beautiful piece of insignia. It was described in the 70s as obviously late 18th century, assumed to be manufactured around the time of the investiture. With so few pieces being available on the open market, we have very few examples to compare against. But I've alluded to it in the footnote in the catalogue. You will study pull out your catalogue, study the wings of the dragon and the very particular spotting pattern on the enamel, and then please compare that to another example held in the Royal Collection of a significantly earlier Greater George. Again, we've stuck with the late 18th century details, but we've alluded to a fact that this may actually be a slightly earlier piece. Nonetheless, it is an absolute stunner. Again, it's been over 50 years since this was last offered on the market. Obviously, the previous time it was sold by the family, Adolphus, 1st Duke of Cambridge, had a myriad of offspring. The 2nd Duke obviously was a Knight of the Garter, and his lesser George pieces were sold relatively recently in the rooms of Sotheby's, Morton Eden, and they did extremely well. So the market for rare British orders and decorations is certainly hot. This is the best of the best. You cannot get any better. You cannot get any more senior than the Greater George. If you're a collector of British orders, this is the time to raid the piggy bank. And this will be lot 263. It's the front cover, and it carries a pre-sale estimate of 100 to 140,000. As I said, we haven't sold one here at SPINK since 1995, when I just turned 2 years of age. So this is a great opportunity and a great pleasure for us all to have been in the presence of this piece, and we have high hopes for it on the big day itself. You can see all the photographs which really bring this charming piece to life, and we're hopeful it will find a very happy home on the 28th. So we go from the Order of the Garter, the oldest, the most senior British order, to the Order of the Bath. So again, we've got a fine offering of single British orders and decorations in this sale. And again, we go back even further in time. We go back to the early 17th century this time. And in this little jewel box is another little treasure. This time a knight's badge. Circa 1625 to 49, we've placed this. Again, 3 diamond set crowns, obviously with the thistle and the English rose, set off with an absolutely beautiful natural pearl. Again, please go and study the photographs. It's in a 19th century jeweller's case, and was, I won't say common, but other examples of this very early period of Bath insignia. Obviously, it was known that after the coronation of King Charles I in 1625, the Earl Marshal was proclaimed that the badge of the order should encompass 3 crowns in the centre with branches and leaves around them. So again, this is obviously from that design. Badges like this during the Civil War would obviously have been rather frowned upon if you're in the wrong circles. And so it was probably tucked away. And a similar example for this order can be seen in a portrait by Robert Peake, the famous portrait artist of the period. And that was, again, we referenced that in the catalogue listing. I think you can see that reproduced actually. That shows a very similar badge of similar style, similar format, from the period sort of 1615, 1620. So again, there have been visual representations of this order. This is absolutely beautiful early gold work, stunning small old cut diamonds set into the crowns, lovely 3D finish, and it's just an absolutely smashing badge. Again, as we've alluded to, it may possibly have had a green wreath around the edge at some point. And again, it's reappeared, and it's rather a new discovery. Was found or purchased in the medieval jewellery sort of market here in London by a collector who specialises in medieval jewellery, and they spotted the 3 crowns, spotted the iconography, and with further research, again, it's been identified. So again, lovely to put a face to a name. Again, it's a smashing badge. Remind me the last time you saw a piece of 17th century Bath insignia. Again, I can't find too many other examples. Lot 264, it's 20 to 30,000. And so they're 2 absolutely beautiful early pieces of British insignia. I'm going to pass over to Harry, and we'll go on from there.
Thank you very much, Marcus. I will be talking about a couple of really interesting lots today. The first, lot 161, also a unique item, the Cumberland Society Gold Medal awarded to Field Marshal Sir George Howard. A really stunning thing, believed to be the only attributed example on the market, sold by the family at Christie's in 2011. This was awarded for the being a member of the Cumberland Society, which was a drinking club formed after the Battle of Culloden by the senior officers of the British Army that was present at the battle. And every year on the Duke's birthday, a new member would be inducted. Howard had a remarkable career. He began his career with the regiment which was in fact his father's, the 3rd Regiment of Foot, then called Howard's Old Buffs, now the Buffs, which was named as such to distinguish them from another regiment commanded by a Howard, which is of course the Green Howards. The Cumberland Society, as I say, formed after the battle, required in the rules of the society to for officers to wear their gold medals, which was given as a token of membership during active campaigning and during combat. They had a rule which said that if the medal was to be lost during action, it would be replaced at the cost of the society. And this was known to have happened once during Braddock's Folly, during the 7 Years' War, not long afterwards, where a medal was lost and was subsequently replaced. So any action which Howard took part in after the Battle of Culloden, he would have been wearing this medal. It is also, from a purely numismatic point of view, interesting because it is the first medal known to have been worn on a specific riband, and this is the original riband, again believed to be the only example with the original riband remaining. As I say, Howard went on to have an interesting career after the Battle of Culloden. He was present at the Battle of Laughfield and then went on to see service in the 7 Years' War himself as a brigadier. And finally, he was the 5th governor of the Royal Military Hospital at Chelsea. A really remarkable thing. The estimate is £30,000 to £40,000. Moving on then to my next lot, lot 236, a Maiwand DCM for EB battery, awarded to Quartermaster Sergeant John Munro, the senior NCO to be awarded for the Battle of Maiwand, to be awarded the DCM, and also somewhat uniquely, in fact entirely uniquely, awarded the Empress of India medal for the coronation as Empress of India of Queen Victoria in 1877. And an example of the Empress of India medal is sold with this lot as well. Munro obviously was present in India for the coronation in 1877 and from thence went on to Afghanistan later, being part of the British Army which sallied out to fight Ayub Khan at the Battle of Maiwand. The battle, I'm sure everybody will be familiar with. EB battery was present in the centre of the British line. They were under heavy fire for much of the day, exchanging fire with the Afghan army, which had far greater array of artillery than the British had been expecting. And when the British left finally broke, a number of them ran down the line, fouling the lines of fire that the rest of the British Army had, making it very difficult for them to effectively continue the battle and allowing the Afghan infantry to get very close in on them. EB battery was required to save the guns, which of course they did to great effect and with a great deal of gallantry, and Munro was awarded his DCM for the saving of the guns and the subsequent retreat. Afterwards, of course, the battle was not by any means the end of their day. They were required to face a grueling retreat back to Kandahar, where they endured a siege and then fought at the Battle of Kandahar at what effectively was the end of the war. Munro went on to leave the battery very soon after the end of the Afghan war, and he was presented his DCM in Dublin. at a full parade of the garrison. The estimate for this is £4,000 to £6,000. I will pass you over to Claudia to continue with the talk.
Thank you very much, Harry. So I've selected a couple of examples from the Kingdom of Egypt to show you today. The first is Lot 341, the Khedive Abbas Hilmi Bravery Medal. This medal functioned as a kind of Egyptian counterpart to the Distinguished Conduct Medal and was awarded to non-commissioned officers and men who were mentioned in dispatches for meritorious or distinguished service in the field or before the enemy. However, the history of this medal was quite short-lived. It was instituted by Special Army Order in May 1913, only to become obsolete less than 2 years later in December 1914 with the deposition of the Khedive. On the obverse face of this silver medal, we can see an Arabic inscription with the name of the Khedive, and on the reverse side, we can see text in both Arabic and English, with the Arabic translating to "for magnanimity." This medal is Lot 341 and has an estimate of £600 to £800. So for the next one, I've selected Lot 322, the Order of Muhammad Ali, second type neck badge. This beautiful and very rare piece was created by Lats of Cairo. It weighs 55.8 grams and tests as 90% purity gold. The green enamel center bears the name Muhammad Ali, and the surrounding white enamel gold inscription reads in Arabic, "Three things protect the rule: compassion, justice, and generosity." The rest of the badge features 6 points with multicolored decorative enamel work supplemented by 12 precious gemstones and presented on its original riband. The Order of Muhammad Ali was first created by the Sultan Hussein Kamal in 1915, and the second type of the order, to which this badge belongs, was instituted by decree of the Sultan and later King Fuad in 1919, with this particular example being created between 1919 and 1926. The order was later abolished along with the monarchy in 1954. You can find this as Lot 322 of our auction with an estimate of £1,500 to £2,000. And last but not least, on to Robert.
Thank you very much indeed, Claudia. So I'm going to round off today's little preview of our favourite lots with two favourite lots of my own. Now, predictably, one of them is, of course, Napoleonic, as regular viewers will come to expect. But then I've got a bit of a wild card to finish off with, which is far more modern than Napoleonic. So we'll come to that very, very shortly. So, without further ado, I shall start with this lovely Napoleonic, or slightly indeed post-Napoleonic, Naval General Service Medal, single clasp for the Battle of Navarino to William Johnstown Nelson Neal, who was a volunteer second class aboard the 28-gun frigate HMS Talbot at the Battle of Navarino. As the name might, as you might have got a hint there from my reading out the full name, one of his middle names being Nelson, there's a good, strong naval connection here, and I'll discuss that very, very shortly. So, the Battle of Navarino was fought on the 20th of October, 1827, almost 22 years to the day since the Battle of Trafalgar. So naval veterans of the Napoleonic Wars obviously thought or prized that day very, very highly indeed. And I'm sure the Commander-in-Chief, Admiral Codrington, would have had that day very much in his mind as he led his fleet towards the Egyptian-Ottoman opposing forces. Now, you can read all about the reasons for the battle, which are long and complicated in my catalogue description, but basically the Allied fleet commanded by Codrington comprised British, French and Russian vessels. They were hugely outnumbered by an Egyptian-Turkish navy, but the gunnery of the Allied fleet far surpassed that of the Egyptian-Turkish forces, which had a huge amount to play with the eventual victory over them. So one might not expect a frigate to stand in the line of battle alongside battleships, blasting away at each other broadside to broadside, but due to the fact that Codrington's force was so heavily outnumbered, the frigates were expected to play just as much of a part in the action as the ships of the line. And indeed, HMS Talbot was very fiercely engaged throughout the action with multiple enemy vessels. And in fact, she suffered the most casualties of any of the smaller British ships at the Battle of Navarino, with 6 killed and 17 wounded. So young volunteer Neil, basically a volunteer was somewhat akin to a midshipman. Young volunteer Neil was very much in the thick of the fighting during the battle. It was a resounding Allied victory, so no Allied ships were lost, whereas 70 of the 78 Egyptian Turkish vessels were sunk, captured or burned. So a resounding Allied victory. But it did come, of course, at cost. Now, back to young Mr. Neil. So he left the Royal Navy fairly shortly afterwards, so he didn't have a particularly long career, but of course he did earn his medal and clasp for that action. And he became a barrister shortly afterwards. In fact, he started to practice law not too far away from here at the Inns of Court. And as well as becoming a barrister, he later became an author of popular Royal Navy-themed sea stories. So in the 1830s and 40s, that sort of genre in the sort of early Victorian era really became very, very popular. So parents were buying these books for their offspring in the hope that they would join the Navy and be inspired by these great stories. And William Neil became an author of similar books. And in fact, examples of his titles included The Port Admiral, A Tale of War, Gentleman Jack, A Naval Story, and of course, A History of the Mutiny at Spithead and the Nore. So he was really into that sort of theme and writing these wonderful stories. But then that took a slightly sour note because in November 1834, he actually came to blows with a fellow author of naval stories called Frederick Marryat. Now, Marryat is, even to this day, a pretty well-known author of naval sea stories. He too was a veteran naval officer of the Napoleonic Wars, and there's a wonderful account that I found in a newspaper of November 1834, where he accosted Marryat in none other location than Trafalgar Square, quite appropriately, and basically started to fight him. So he came to blows. He hit him with his walking stick. The reason being, apparently, that Marryat had published a negative review of one of Neil's latest books in a recent journal. And Neil didn't like this fact and so decided to try and beat Marryat up. They were both arrested by the constabulary, and it went to the magistrate's court, and they were bound over to keep the peace, and Neil was fined a sum of money. But it didn't do his career any harm, even though he was a legal man by profession, and he continued writing books, he continued practicing the law. And then in 1846, he actually married a lady called Miss Frances Nisbet. Now, Frances Nisbet was the daughter of Captain Josiah Nisbet of the Royal Navy, who was none other than Admiral Nelson's stepson, from Nelson's marriage to a lady called Frances Nisbet, who he then, of course, famously and sadly left for the charms and beguiling nature of Emma Hamilton. And so he married into the Nelson family in a sense, and lived a good full life thereafter, died at the age of 81 in March 1893. Now, this is lot 11 in the upcoming sale, so nice and early on. I expect I shall be on the rostrum to see this medal go under the hammer. Has an estimate of £1,800 to £2,200. Lots of good story there, and I do hope one of our naval enthusiasts, or indeed a number of naval enthusiasts, will bid for this medal, because I think it's, the story is fantastic. And so yes, from the Royal Navy then, I turned to the Army, and going far, far forward in time, as I said, I'm going to throw in a bit of a wild card from outside of my usual offering, and go to this really, really fascinating group of 5 more modern medals here, to a chap called Lieutenant Colonel David Dunn. formerly of the Durham Light Infantry, later on the Light Infantry as they became. And as you can see, it's the fascinating combination. We start with career here, the Queen's career, then the UN career, then 2 General Service medals, rounded off with the Falklands Medal with the all-important rosette. Now, Colonel David Dunn is quite possibly the only soldier to have physically served on land during both the Korean War and the Falklands War. Dunn spent no less than 35 years in uniforms, a remarkable record of service across the globe represented in these medals. He was a second lieutenant, young platoon commander, fresh out of Sandhurst, and then off to Korea. And then the GSM first type with multiple 3 clasps on his first GSM for Cyprus, the Arabian Peninsula and the Canal Zone, rounded off with a mention in dispatches, then his second type GSM for Northern Ireland, and then, as I said, his Falklands Medal as well. So what was he doing? Well, you can read all about it in the catalogue, but basically, as I said, he was a platoon commander in Korea, and then by the time of the Falklands conflict in 1982, he was SO2 Public Relations, and basically his job was to control and oversee all the news outlets that were physically reporting on the conflict from the Falkland Islands. So that included the BBC, ITV, the Times, the Telegraph, the Sun, and many more newspapers besides. What I find particularly interesting, and again, it's a small world when you get into this sort of thing, is that one of his charges during the conflict was a gentleman by the name of Paul Haley, who was the reporter for Soldier magazine. Now, again, some of our viewers may recognise this name because, in fact, Paul's medal was sold by us in these rooms in January of this year, along with a very comprehensive archive of material for the exceptional sum of £6,500. And so it's really remarkable to think that indeed David Dunn and Paul Haley knew each other, worked together during the Falklands conflict, and we have had the privilege to handle their medals on separate occasions here at SPINK. Now, in addition to all this, we have also been very fortunate indeed to have a huge number of first-hand accounts of Dunn's career, and indeed he himself has contributed a great deal to our catalogue description. You can read again all about it in the catalogue itself. It is all transcribed there for you, exactly as he has written it. So we are extremely grateful to David and particularly his daughter for all the kind effort and help they have given us in really ensuring that there's been such a personal touch to this fantastic group of medals and the record we have given them in the published catalogue. So Lieutenant Colonel Dunn's medals comprise lot 137 in our auction and have an estimate of £3,000 to £5,000. I can see via SPINK Live that there's already been plenty of action and pre-bidding, and so I'm sure on auction day they will do extremely well, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the final hammer price. And so therefore that concludes my offering to you today, and we have all chosen a few lots that I hope you have enjoyed listening to, and so it remains for me to say from Marcus, Harry, Claudia and myself, thank you very much indeed for listening and indeed watching, and we hope that lots of you will also enjoy watching, listening and perhaps bidding on auction day. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye.